G'day, I'm Ian Swain, the owner and president of Swain Destinations, the company that customizes travel experiences to Australia, New Zealand, South Pacific Islands, Africa, Asia and India. And welcome to another G'day with Ian Swain. Today we're going back to my homeland again of Australia. Matt Cameron Smith has been a mate of mine for quite a few years and held different managerial roles in the tourism industry, from hotels, theme parks, government and winery activities, and he's now the CEO of Voyages Indigenous Tourism. Voyages is owned by the Indigenous Land Council and manages their tourism entities, which was started many years ago. Ayers Rock Resort, which has numerous hotels such as Sails in the Desert, Desert Gardens, Outback Pioneer, Lost Camel and Emu Walk, are their largest accommodation group. They also run the Mossman Gorge Centre in Queensland. So g'day, Matt, and thanks for sharing this time with us today.
G'day, Ian. Always great to see you. Thanks for your time.
Mate, just tell us a little bit about more the Indigenous Land Corporation.
Absolutely. So our focus is very much on being a purpose-led organisation, and that comes in several ways. Certainly, it's about delivering authentic Indigenous experiences to travellers, both domestic and international. But it's also about ensuring ongoing employment opportunities, jobs for Indigenous people. And so it's about an annuity style return to them to ensure that we're providing education and training, but also that we're giving our guests the real Australia.
Now, Matt, I mentioned Ayers Rock Resort as a name, yet Uluru is the Aboriginal name for the rock. Why didn't you call it Uluru Resort?
We went through a process several years ago with the local traditional owners, and that is the Anangu people. And Uluru, importantly, is actually a family name. So Reggie Uluru is still living out at the resort, out at the rock. And as we went through that consultation process, when we went from Ayers Rock to Uluru, Uluru is actually their family name. And it was their preference that we keep the name of the resort and the icon or the traditional aspect of that land separated. And where we landed was to ensure we always refer to the rock as Uluru, and that we refer to the resort as Ayers Rock Resort. The village itself, or the township itself, is called Yulara.
Right, and before we get to the experiences that you can have out there, let's talk about Yulara and the actual hotels that are there and explain the differences. You've got quite a few I mentioned, from Sails, Desert Gardens, Outback Pioneer, Lost Camel, Emu Walk. What is the difference between them all, and how they all fit into the puzzle of the travel industry?
It starts with the campground, and we have a combination of powered and non-powered sites plus a camping area. There's a pool there, there's amenities. We have a very cool food truck that comes out there. Guests can use, but of course they can also access the facilities and the food and beverage outlets within the property itself. So the campground's where we start. We then go into Outback Pioneer, which is quite deliberately a sort of rustic outback pub kind of feel about it. Sitting out there in the beer garden, there's usually a lamb on the spit, there's a cook your own steak, there's a restaurant. And it's more about our 3-star kind of accommodation. Very popular with international travellers because it really gives that sense of being in the outback. We would then go to Emu Walk apartments. Great for families, self-contained 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. Very well fitted out for families and located right in the middle of the property, or towards the middle of the property. We would then go to the Lost Camel, which is refurbed about 4 years ago, and looking fantastic. Lost Camel is, again, a very strong 3.5 star kind of offering, and linked to the main spine of the resort. From there, we go to Desert Gardens, where you've got these amazing rock view rooms and garden view rooms. Desert Gardens has an Uli Grill, which is one of my favourites, a fantastic grill restaurant. I would say it's more towards the fine dining side, a la carte, an amazing coffee shop and bar. And then we move into the icon, which is Sails in the Desert. And that's our 5-star property. With Okari restaurants, which is buffet breakfast and dinner, Walpa Bar, and of course our pool bar, where you can relax.
Now you can go between all the different food outlets, can't you, once you're on property?
Yeah, in fact, we have 13 different food and beverage outlets, and that is anything from our fine dining through to probably one of my favourites, and that is Kalada Cafe, and that's our training cafe for our Indigenous trainees. So they make an amazing soy flat white for those of you who like a great coffee.
Now, talking about just what you're talking about, educating the locals, you've got a course out there, an establishment that trains and educates locals in the travel industry. Can you explain a little bit more about that? Because it's intriguing to me.
So back in 2011, we established the National Indigenous Training Academy, and that really is about giving Indigenous kids hard skills and on-the-job training and importantly, a certification. So we work with two institutes. One is the Charles Darwin University out of the top end, and the other is the William Angliss Institute. And our graduates, after a year of residential training, actually come out with a nationally recognised certification in either retail, hospitality or horticulture. And their skills learnt on the job. And we run those facilities in both Mossman Gorge and Yulara. And in fact, just Saturday just gone, I was up at the property and we celebrated 43 graduates coming through, a 93% success rate, even during COVID, which we're very proud of. And that we actually celebrated our 523rd graduate, which now makes us the most successful Indigenous training academy in those disciplines anywhere in Australia. And we're very proud of that.
Well, that's great. Now, do you employ everybody coming through the course, or are they able to get jobs in other destinations and other companies?
Well, where possible, we always want to retain the team, and that's part of the program, is that they're retained within the property or within Voyages somewhere. And we like to think of it not just about a job, it's about a career. However, in areas like Mossman Gorge, where it's a bit more seasonal, we have a great relationship with our partners at Accor, and our trainees can actually go and work in some of those amazing Accor properties in Palm Cove and Port Douglas. So it's important that we provide a pathway and a career, as well as a job with us, if that's their choice.
That's great for the Indigenous people, and it's just going to grow and grow. Is there a scope to make that larger?
Absolutely. As we look to expanding, and we always got our eye on opportunities elsewhere in Australia, certainly through the Northern Territory and broader. And as we can grow our property portfolio, our vision is that NITA grows with us, and that we can take that opportunity of training, of employment and education wherever we go. Great.
Now, talking about some of the experiences, and the main experience that I can remember every time I've been to the Rock, I've done it a few times now, is actually I climbed the Rock. The first time I was 15 or 16, I was on a school excursion, a 2-week camping trip around Australia, and we stopped at Uluru for a couple of days. And I remember climbing up to the top, and then I should have been doing this, but I was racing down to the bottom of the hill with one of my mates. And I was lucky I kept my footing properly, and I safely did that. But I know now that you can't climb it, and I know that was a big decision that was made just recently with the elders and with the Indigenous Land Corporation. Can you go over as to why that decision was made, and how that affects, or has it affected the Rock viewing?
It was closed for two reasons. Firstly, it's their land. It belongs to the Anangu people, and there are many sacred sites around the base of the Rock. Climbing the Rock itself, it was about people may get injured doing that, and if you do get injured, the whole community feels that pain. Curiously, historically, 40% of people who arrive at Yulara or Uluru had intentions to climb the Rock, but only around 14% ever did. And I think that's a couple of reasons. Firstly, we're not all as dexterous as a 16-year-old Ian Swain. Deeper than you think.
It's a lot steeper, yes.
And I think the other thing was, you got there and you just thought, you know what, I just want to be part of this amazing sense of place. And so they changed their mind. But there's a lot to do in Uluru, not just about the Rock itself. And when I go there on a regular basis, and every time I look at it, I see something different. It's that kind of, whether the light's changing or you see a different element of the Rock. But equally, Kata Tjuta is almost as mysterious. It's larger technically, and there's amazing walks throughout it. More to do than just to scale the Rock.
You mentioned Kata Tjuta, which when I grew up, it was of course called the Olgas. Explain that a little bit, and also the Valley of the Winds.
Sure. So Kata Tjuta is Uluru is the largest single rock formation in the world. Kata Tjuta is what you would call a composite rock formation. So it's made of different kind of rocks. And there's a valley through. There's many parts of Kata Tjuta you can walk around or walk through. But there's a hike that's probably one of my favourites, and it's called Valley of the Winds. And because of the shape of the way Kata Tjuta sort of splits in the middle, there's a hike throughout the middle, and you come to an amazing, about 3.5 k's in, an amazing lookout. And you realise that what you see from the outside is not just a silhouette, it's as deep as it is wide. And it's quite a remarkable formation. I had the pleasure of flying over it on the way home on Sunday, and it's just breathtaking.
Right, and you've also got Sounds of Silence to dinner that's been going for many, many years, and I've gone to that
Yeah.
many, many times, and that's still very possible. You've got 3 or 4 different sites I think you use for that now.
We do. So there's 3 sites. Some incorporate the Field of Light, which is also a permanent installation now. So Star Pass incorporates that. So you can actually dine at Sounds of Silence incorporating the Field of Light. We have other sites a bit more remote. And that's all about the amazing dune top viewing platform. The sun setting over Kata Tjuta. You've got Uluru in the distance. And as the sun sets, you walk down the pathway to the amazing Field of Light dinner. And that's really all about local produce, appreciating that sense of place, and of course the sun setting on these icons of both Kata Tjuta and Uluru, and enjoying an amazing dinner out under the stars.
Let's talk about Fields of Light for a second, because I've been there a couple of times and it's been so impressive. It was meant to be there for 1 year, I think, initially.
Yeah.
And that was the installation, and then it stayed on.
Well, that's right. It's 50,000 light bulbs on stems. There's 6 colour palettes within it on 6 football fields, Australian football fields. 6 football fields, and it's a light installation that is really about simulating desert flowers, and the lights change or colour changes every 6 seconds, and it's one of the few installations that you can actually walk throughout. So as the sun dips over Uluru or Kata Tjuta, this light bed comes to life, but you can also then view it, and it's one of those I guess the great challenges where you can dine at it at night time, but the next morning you can go out there for sunset. So when you arrive at Field of Light, the only light you have is the stars and this amazing field. And then you watch the light change as the sun rises and the field goes to sleep. It's pretty cool.
I know the artist, we had dinner with him one time after he just installed it the first time. He has a light experience out here in Pennsylvania at Longwood Gardens, which is just down our street. And it's quite well known, but it's just amazing how it's going to stay on there for so long. It's great that it's still there. There's also other experiences you can do from the rock. As you can go to Kings Canyon, you can go to Mount Connor and include a longer version, a longer stay there. What else is there you can do out there that you're aware of?
Well, it's really about depending on how active you want to be or how passive. And I'll talk in a minute about a changing guest profile we've seen as we come out of COVID, at least in this part of the world. But you can cycle around the rock. You can take a Segway. One of the iconic experiences, I think, is riding a camel around the rock. So you can do a camel ride to the rock either at sunrise or sunset. If you want something a little bit more speedy, then we have Harley rides. You can take a helicopter or a fixed-wing plane over both Kata Tjuta and Uluru. You can even jump out of a plane if you want to. So there's a lot to do. But equally, there's a lot of free activities that we offer in the resort, and probably one of the most popular is our Bush Tucker guided walks, where our local team take you around and explain some of the bush tucker. And most don't realise that there's bush tomato, bush rosemary, bush thyme, all of which, of course, we use in our produce, or take in as a produce and use in our food and beverage offerings.
I remember when last time I took the helicopter around there were certain areas that they couldn't fly around the rock, literally around it in respect of the elders of the community.
That's absolutely true. Even if we're doing commercial photography, we have a lot of people wanting to do photo shoots out there, be it fashion or art or just geography. And there's certain parts of the rock that you should never photograph. And so because of that, we always work very closely with national parks to ensure that we're adhering to every protocol that's required by the Anangu people.
Right. How often do you meet with the Anangu people?
Very regularly. In fact, we have Anangu representation on our board. Because it's very much about a partnership. The Murrajula Community Aboriginal Council is a very important partner of ours. We work very, very closely with them in terms of really getting aviation going again, and to ensure that we had the right protocols in place to ensure that the communities that were certainly deemed vulnerable were kept as safe as possible.
You mentioned aviation, and you look at where Uluru is, or where Ayers Rock Resort is, it's right in the center of Australia, and there's a lot of desert around there. It's hard to get to by vehicle. It's a long drive. I know my brother's done it a couple of times, but it's a bit of an experience. Flying is the best way to do it, and aviation, or the return of aviation, I should say, is critical to the survival of the Ayers Rock Resort, or the thriving of it. Explain how you've gone through that process during COVID.
Sure. Well, it's I think COVID years, I think we talk about like almost in dog years now, like 1 year is equivalent to about 5.
Yeah.
And certainly true within the tourism industry. We enjoyed 33 flights direct a week out of various Australian ports in February. By the middle of August, that looked like none, one big donut. So we had to work very closely with both the community, with the airport that we operate, and with airports around Australia as our borders opened up. Now, unlike the US, we're also a federalised country, but our borders closed to each other. So you literally couldn't travel between Queensland and the NT or New South Wales and the NT. So as those borders opened up, we had to work very closely with our airline partners to really get that capacity going again. And what that meant for us is that we had protocols in place for the departing airport as well as the arriving airport. And what that looked like was our team actually being there, checking the last 14 days whereabouts of everyone travelling, ensuring they had their medical documentation up to date, they had their border access up to date. And we actually paid for all that to ensure that it was as safe as could be, that the well-being was protected as possible. Then when you arrived at Uluru, you had to show your credentials to NT Health representatives, just to ensure we're doing everything possible to safeguard the well-being of the community. So it was certainly a team effort, but delighted to say that now here we are, early December, and we're at around 40% of pre-COVID air capacity, and we think that'll grow.
Did you have to send a lot of the employees or the team members back to their homes during the period of time of close down, or did you keep everybody there?
A bit of both. So we did what we could to ensure that everyone stayed on. There was some stand downs that were inevitable, and it's always difficult to do. But equally, we're now scrambling for people. Ironically, as we ramp up again, people who were stood down were welcome to stay, and we furloughed all of their rental. We also run a very big rent roll there for staff. If you work there, you live there. So our staff quarters are a very big part of our operation. We didn't charge rent, so we made it as easy as possible to stay. For those who chose to go back to their home state or home country, certainly they were given priority when we restarted. I guess one of the challenges there is with our international borders currently closed. I say currently because we're all optimistic that will be short-lived. Those who went back to their home country found it difficult to get back, but their home state, we then work with the states and territories to undergo quarantine protocols and get them back to work as fast as possible.
So if everybody who stayed behind were basically in their own lockdown purely by where the location is, did you hear any great stories of kindredship or getting together and doing the right thing for everybody during that time?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of stories about cookouts and cook-ups and the Great Australian Barbecue coming into play. So, as people were either not working or relying on less hours, there was a great sharing of hours. So we worked with a team to introduce new flexible work agreements. And what that looked like was if we had, 40 hours work a week, but for 6 people, they divvied it up and they all shared shifts. So at least everyone got some income as well as the base levels.
Right.
And it really was about a team of a camaraderie. That, and also they cross-trained. So you might have someone working in reception, then working in the garden, or helping clean the pool, or helping clear tables. So it was really about multi-skilling and just ensuring that for those guests we could welcome, none of our challenges became theirs. And it was ensuring that we could offer that amazing guest experience, even at a reduced level. And as we ramp up, that same philosophy exists where, our issues have got to be our issues, not the guests. And we're all about giving the guests an amazing experience. And I think the team did a good job.
That'll be some great stories that they'll share with their kids and grandkids as they go through life. Listen, Matt, it's been really great talking to you and seeing you again after all this time. I wish we could see each other in person, but we'll be able to do that very soon, I hope. I appreciate the time and sharing your stories and sharing the outlook of what's going on. And I wish you well and hope that everything gets back to normal as soon as possible.
Well, Ian, always great to see you, and certainly our best wishes to everyone out there in the US, and we hope to see you soon. And I can guarantee you that once these borders open, you will never feel more welcome anywhere in the world.
Okay, mate. Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See ya.